99-cent rental.
This is 99 Cent Rental. I'm your host, Brian White, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, Dave White. Hey, Dave, how you doing?
Well, I'm pretty good, I guess. I don't know why, but for the last, week or two, I have had a, intense craving for cigarettes. And
Weird.
yeah, I quit smoking 4 years ago. I was a very heavy smoker, but I smoked for 20 years. And
yeah. When I quit smoking, it occurred to me that I had been smoking for over half of my life.
Yeah.
And that struck me as terribly, terribly depressing.
Yeah. And it got really expensive. But I don't know why, but for the last couple weeks, I have just multiple times throughout the day, I'm like, God damn it, I would kill for a cigarette. And it doesn't usually happen, but I don't know why. I feel like smoking is making a comeback, maybe. Does it? I mean, I don't know what kind of spaces you operate in. Well, yes, I do, but I know they don't do a lot of smoking in them. But I feel like I see a lot of people smoking actual cigarettes again, which I think that's probably preferable to vaping.
I don't know. It's a losing game either way, if you ask me. But yeah, smoking. Well, it's an expensive habit these days. Yeah. So, hey, it's hard to explain to someone who never had the experience what a trip to the video store was like back in the day. The shelves were choked with absolutely bizarre crap made on tiny budgets, completely divorced from any recognizable reality, and it was the best. And we intend to talk about every one of them. Just before we get into it, here's a little housekeeping. If you want to keep up with us between episodes, you can also find us on Instagram at BringMeTheAxePod, and Dave's over there at ThatQueerWolf. I'm also on TikTok, if you do that sort of thing, doing the dancing the night away, just having a grand old time. I really
hope people are going to that being can't wait to see these dances.
And then they get there and they're like, what the fuck is this?
This isn't dancing.
And they're just I can see all this on Instagram. What am I doing here?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that's a very good question.
Yeah. So yeah, you look us up by name over there. And if you don't know, we have another show called Bring Me the Axe. Our latest episode is covering Scream, is out now, and we'll be back next week with a look at 1931 Spanish language Dracula. Yep. Yeah, it's going to be fun. We're going to have a guest for that one. You can also contact us directly at 99centrentalpod@gmail.com with any questions, comments, or suggestions. Do let us know if there's a cheesy movie that you love and would like to hear us give it the business. And lastly, if you like what you hear, you can subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. We're on YouTube now. Search us by name and subscribe if you prefer to consume your podcasts that way. And you'd be doing us a favor by leaving us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. So, do it. I don't know what else to tell you.
Yeah.
Just get out there.
I would like it. I'd like it if you did it.
Yeah, it's fun. It's not fun. I don't know why I say that. It's easy, though. That's the thing.
But you feel good. You feel like you've contributed something. You're oh, I'm going to make the world a better place by giving this podcast a good review. and
yeah,
that's the small way you can make the world happier.
Yeah, because I'll tell you what, it has a sort of cascading effect. Because I see the number go up, and I'm like, oh, that feels so fucking good. And then I go out and I do great things, and it just sort of pay it forward is how.
Yeah, it's like that dumbass movie, Pay It Forward
with Kevin Spacey.
Oh, yikes. I forgot that he was in it.
Yeah.
It's like that dumbass movie starring that rapist Kevin Spacey.
Yeah. And if you listen on YouTube, do us a favor, give the episode a like, and leave a comment. We love hearing from you guys. Just want to get that out of the way right at the top of the show, because I'm going to give you a taste of what we're talking about tonight. And you know what? This movie doesn't have an English language trailer, so I'm going to give it to you in Japanese anyways. Here we go.
Toho. Submarines.
Dragons.
Oh, yeah, no, it's really cool. Yeah. Ghidorah's head underwater.
Oh, shit. Oh. Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah. UFOs. Newspapers. Maps.
Asians.
Very concerned men. Military vehicles. Oh, they're blowing up now.
Yeah.
ゴジラ映画史上最強最大のライバルキングギドラその出現に隠された未来人の
He's real shiny.
Yeah. This King Ghidorah shooting mouth lightning, destroying Tokyo.
キングギドラの出現は23世紀の人間たちによる仕業っていうこと
Oh, here he comes.
Yeah,
He's so
my
mad.
boy.
引き寄せられるかのように再び目を覚ましたゴジラ。2204年の未来から次々と送り込まれる現在への挑戦。今まさに時空を超え壮絶な戦いが始まろうとしている。
Yeah, he's the best part.
なぜ彼らはキングギドラを生み出しこの日本を破壊しようとするんだ。
Oh, there he is.
Oh. 一段とパワーアップ。ニューキングギドラ。
Ooh.
迎え撃つゴジラ。二大怪獣最後の激突。ゴジラ対キングギドラ。
Ooh, yeah. He sends you off with a little atomic breath.
It's, you get the gist. King Ghidorah.
Yeah, they keep saying it. Gojira, King Ghidorah. What else do you need to
What
know?
more do you need to know?
Godzilla versus King Ghidorah.
Again.
Yeah, I can't remember why we're doing two of these in a row.
I don't. I think it was my idea because all the bad ideas are my ideas.
Well, this one was my pick originally. I was like, we haven't done Godzilla yet. How can that possibly be? And so I think the original, we picked the Showa one, and then we were going to do this as a sort of compare and contrast.
Yeah.
And there's something to be said there, because it's definitely, there's plot similarities.
Yeah.
And
I think because this is way out of my wheelhouse, this whole era, like the later eras are not, I'm not very familiar. I've seen them, but I'm not very familiar with them. And I think I was just like, well, I don't have a fucking thing to contribute to this discussion.
Oh boy. It's
Turns out I actually might.
the plot of this movie is insane. It is so fucking weird. Boy, yeah. Let's get into it. Let's do this.
Okay.
Let's do it proper. So yeah, the year was 1991,
I remember it.
year of our Lord. So here are some other movies released in Japan that year.
No good.
No, 964 Pinocchio came out that year.
Is that a sex picture?
Kind of, actually. It's it's one of those weird sort of like indie lo-fi cyberpunk movies that were happening in Japan at the time. I've seen it. It's quite good.
Oh, you've seen it?
Yes. Yeah. It's a fucking crazy movie, man. But yeah, it involves a sex robot that kind of goes out of control.
Nice.
Yeah.
Hot.
Yep. Also, Zeiram came out in that year, which is a fucking awesome, like another really cool tokusatsu like sci-fi movie. That's one where an alien bounty hunter comes to Earth and befriends a couple of bumbling idiots who help her like track down like a bad guy alien from space. It's cool.
Well, it sounds Japanese.
It's pretty cool. Here's another one. My Soul is Slashed came out that year.
Well, I don't know what it is. I want to see
I
it.
have not
though.
seen it. You definitely want to see it because I do too. Here's the sort of high level overview of the plot. A dude is accidentally given Count Dracula's blood in a transfusion.
I am 100% on board.
Yep. Takashi Miike's Lady Hunter came out that year also. I don't think I've seen that one though. And we're closing it out, 1991, Shinya Tsukamoto's Hiroku the Goblin, which I have seen, and it's quite good.
Okay.
Yeah, weird movie, man. It's a weird one.
I'm not, my knowledge of Japanese cinema is very, very limited, as you know, largely to these films. And, there's some other Toho stuff, but it's mostly 60s and 70s.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely went through a period, like once this stuff became available, sort of to the wider market, I dove really, really deep into Japanese movies because for a really, really long time, with the exception of Toho stuff and really just Toho Godzilla stuff, Japan had like just an allergic reaction to sort of opening its movies up to the sort of broader public. So nothing was ever subtitled. Their movies were made specifically for Japanese audiences, and that's it, man. And if you didn't speak the language...
I would argue that as much as I think that is, obviously I think everybody should be watching international films of all kinds, I can see why you'd be like, I don't think any other culture is going to really understand this. Like, Japan when it comes to film, Japan's culture really comes through. And every single time I'm like, what the fuck is going on in that country?
Yeah. Yeah.
They're real sad about stuff all the time, and they're really struggling with their identities pretty much all the time.
Yeah. There's also the fact that like comedies don't really translate very well to Western audiences.
No, it's like watching Italian comedies where you're like, is this a porno? This isn't funny.
It's like, is it supposed to be this offensive? Yeah.
Is that person in blackface? And the answer is usually yes.
Yeah, there is one. Frankenstein Girl versus Vampire Girl, I think it was called, was sent to me for review a really, really long time ago. And there was at one time in Japan, you know how they have there these really like weird sort of like youth microcultures that happen.
Mm-hmm.
There was a thing that was going on for a really long time called Gonjuro girls. They tended, the sort of the thing that everybody kind of knew them for is they wore a lot of very dark makeup, like bronzer, kind of like Donald Trump kind of spray tan type stuff.
Very Jersey Shore of them.
They were really kind of ahead of the curve on that. And this movie had a scene that spoofed them. So if you did not know what was going on, and even if you did, it was still extremely offensive. It had all of them in blackface and afro wigs chanting "Yes, we can."
Wow. Wow.
I know. I was astonished. It was fucking nuts. And this is a movie that was made like 15 years ago, so it's not like it was that long ago.
Goddamn.
Yeah. Dude, it's they got their own thing going on over there.
They sure do.
Yep.
They sure do. But this is also like within 6 years, the Japanese film market would be like blown apart and blown open to mostly Americans, but just sort of Western audiences in general, because you're going to get all the shit like Noroi and The Grudge. Mm-hmm. And I think it all kind of starts with Curse, or not Curse,
the
Cure.
Ring is where it really kind of begins. That's
because Cure comes out before The Ring, but The Ring is the one that really.
Yeah, Cure is 96, Ring is 98.
Cure is a goddamn good movie.
Yeah, it was at that moment that I was like, "What is going?" Because I'd always liked anime, you know,
Mm-hmm.
but even at that point, like 1999, 2000, it was still really, really hard to get properly translated stuff. Like all we had was what was available at like Suncoast Video or like Blockbuster and stuff. And it was always the same like 10 tapes.
Akira,
Bubblegum Crisis, Appleseed, Dirty Pear is another one that's sort of apparent everywhere. But like
again, are these sex films?
No.
These
From
titles
the
sound.
title, it definitely does sound like it is, but no, it's not.
They're amorous titles.
They're very horny. But yeah, but then it really was that. But also there was a sort of inevitability that came along with the internet, where there had always been a fan subtitle community where they would just take these tapes of like anime episodes and they would bootleg them, and somebody would come along and just subtitle them and then redistribute them. So like bootlegging was like hitting them kind of hard. So they were like, fuck it, these Americans want it, they can have it. And all of a sudden the shit was everywhere.
But unlike real cheap transfers is my guess.
There were a few companies that got real proper distribution rights. Funimation got a bunch of them. That was where a lot of my stuff was coming from.
Because like if you look at like right now, I think people are sort of rediscovering, or maybe just discovering, Latin American horror, but I think just sort of more specifically Mexican horror, because there's a very long history of like Mexican Gothic. And outside of, I think Vinegar Syndrome has been doing a really good job putting out some of that stuff. And there's a couple other companies, Severin a little bit, you know, the bigger names. But other than those sort of few titles that they put out, you can get like real cheap, borderline bootleg stuff where it's like you still get like the one of the bonus features is like an interactive menu, and it's like that's the level that you're getting.
Yeah,
and the translation is real questionable. Like I've got a couple of those that are just some old, like 40s or 50s Mexican titles, where it's like, oh, this feels maybe not legal.
Yeah, the Chinese bootleg market definitely provided a lot of that, where like all you got was like the movie, and it was basically like on DVD, but it was ripped from a VCD, which is just like a step up above VHS. So yeah, but like at the same time, like I said, Funimation used to send me stuff, and they always sent them to me in these like very, very like carefully curated boxes. Like they sent me a bento box presentation once that had like the movie and all this other stuff in it. Was
there food in it?
No, there was no food because
because you shouldn't eat the food if there was food in it.
No, but it was cool. It was very interesting. But yeah, like once this stuff started sort of blowing up, like that's when I took a real deep dive into it, and there was no limit. Like everybody was just picking up everything, and it's super interesting to me. Like because the culture is so different from ours, it feels very, very exotic. And
I think that's why I was always put off. Like Godzilla, you can obviously get into because it's like it's sort of ubiquitous in American culture at this point.
Like rubber monster fights.
Yeah,
that's just
Japan.
Universal.
Japan as a culture, I mean, not even relatively speaking, it just in general, it has a very, very long history that is so different from sort of North American culture or even European cultures that I don't really know how to come at it. And I'm always just like, I need to know more before I can understand a lot of this.
Yeah.
Especially when you get into, because as you know, I've been getting into like the samurai movies and starting with like the stuff that Criterion is putting out, which they're doing a really great job. But it is all, because it's all so tightly bound to that particular history. I'm like, I don't know a fucking thing about this. I think the movie looks really cool. And it's shot beautifully, but I have no idea what's going on.
It's for me. Like I find the history of Japan super interesting, and you mostly because if you play, this sounds so fucking cheap and shabby, but if you play enough,
look, and everything we're going to say about Japanese culture right now is going to be fucking like shallow as hell.
Yeah, and I apologize,
and I own that, and I know it's not good, but it's a place to start.
I try. But like a very interesting, like there's several video games out there that give you a very good overview of the Sengoku period, which is Japanese Civil War, the kind of like the high age of samurai and shit like that. Super fascinating stuff, and like just from there you can just sort of like watch movies and read books and stuff like that, just kind of pick up. But the whole shit is just incredibly fascinating.
I mean, I have the same problem with like Eastern European stuff where I'm like, I don't know. And this is because I'm an American, that this is largely like, we don't know a lot about other cultures and other countries, but like Russia or, just as anything you get like Eastern Europe, I'm just like, this feels real foreign.
Yeah.
And the best I've got is probably some real shitty stereotypes in the back of my mind where I'm like, I don't know if I want to come at it from that place. So I just sort of stay away from it altogether. I'm like, I'm just going to misunderstand all of this.
Yeah. Because also Russian movies for a really long time, mostly just because of the Iron Curtain, also have that same sort of mystique about them. Like it's so fucking foreign.
Though I think for me, Russian movies are far less alluring. I find their culture and their history to be a little not to my tastes, I guess.
Yeah. Let's not get too far afield here, though, because we got a cast and crew to talk about.
Yeah, Russian Godzilla, Comrade Godzilla.
We've got our director is a guy named Kazuki Omori. And he's one of the chief creative forces behind the Heisei Godzilla period. He wrote the majority of the movies produced during this period, beginning with 1989's Godzilla vs. Biollante, and he directed a handful of them as well. Unlike
he has like a sense of ownership over it and like an emotional investment, I guess is the term I'm looking for, that is respectable and charming, but also like, dude, it's just a movie.
I know. There is a detail that I'll bring up that I'm sure that you're talking about right here that has to do with this movie's origins of King Ghidorah. Yeah. Unlike the Godfather of Godzilla, Ishiro Honda, Omori was really kind of a utility director who often handled whatever came his way. He did a lot of romances, comedies, and also Super Sentai, which are, if you're not familiar, superhero teams, Power Rangers, that sort of thing. Yeah.
He also gave us Space Godzilla, and for that, don't know if I can forgive him.
God damn, that one is crazy too. So our cast includes Godzilla. He's our big cranky boy, making his 18th appearance overall and his third in the Heisei period.
I say he looks pretty good in this.
I like the design in this one quite a bit. It's this one they called Gido Goji, like in the last one what we talked about, like all the suits had names. It's very, very similar. It's every time they do this, they don't reuse them. They make new molds. These are made from giant silicon molds. Yeah.
I know that the suit weighed like 250 pounds.
250 pounds is how much that suit weighs. That's crazy.
And even the one like underwater still weighed like 180 pounds.
This is basically the same suit with a few modifications that they used from Godzilla vs. Biollante. Where prior Godzilla movies are daikaiju that look like the original Godzilla, but are not. This messes with the continuity in a way that eliminates all of them and brings back the original Godzilla. Yep. Not that it really matters, because it's all Godzilla to me. We've also got
Godzilla to me.
We got King Ghidorah. Japan's floppiest golden dragon is back for another.
He is very new. He's very new in this one.
Yeah, the design is significantly different. He's like way more sleek and not quite so bulky.
Because they were like, hey, remember last time when we did this and the heads kept getting tangled and he was real flaccid looking all the time? Maybe we make a new one that doesn't do that.
Yeah. The original script involved the future remains of King Ghidorah being found on Venus.
That sounds right.
Yeah, but when Omori got the script, he insisted that the premise was stupid. And he wasn't going to make some movie with a space monster.
And so he came out with this story instead, because he also wrote this movie.
So his solution...
Don't be throwing stones there, Omori.
His solution was, like, I don't want this monster to be some dumb space monster. So instead, I'm going to create these cute little guys named the Donorats.
Boo!
As a more plausible origin for King Ghidorah.
I have a theory about why they include those, and I'll get to it later.
Okay.
Get into it.
And closing out the cast, we've got Mecha King Ghidorah.
He looks awesome.
Yes, he does. It's one of my favorite monster designs.
I like how you're not even going to bother with any of the actual people in the movie.
I looked them up, and like, I don't recognize them, and I don't think that our listeners.
This one actually has people that I do recognize in it.
Really?
Yeah, the woman who plays Emmy, Anna Nakagawa, I think is her name. She is in Cure. She's, I think, his wife, the detective's wife. I can't remember her name.
I know. The only reason I recognize the guy who plays Kenichiro is because he's also in Biollante as a different character.
Yeah, he's also in Mr. Baseball.
He's also in Mr. Baseball.
And the guy who plays Professor Mazaki, is that his name?
The science guy that they bring along with him?
Yeah, the older one. Yeah. He's from the original ones.
Oh, no shit. I didn't know that.
He's the older brother in the Megalon, Godzilla vs. Megalon. He's in Terror of Mechagodzilla.
Shit. The guy who makes Jet Jaguar.
Yes.
Oh, my God. Okay, so I'm doing y'all a disservice by not talking about these people. At least you're there to pick up the slack.
And then I think the guy who owns the company...
Shindo?
Maybe it's him. I think it might be him. I believe, one of them's like the original Kamen Rider.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Maybe it might not be him. It might be someone else, because he was also in a bunch of the Baby Cart movies. Oh. The Lone Wolf and Cub movies.
All right. Well, yeah. Yeah.
So this is actually a bit of a star-studded cast here.
Yeah. But, yeah.
This is also when we get Akira Ifukube comes back to do this one.
Yes, he does. I got a little note about that. So, yeah, if Toho loves a giant monster, the only thing that makes it better is a gigantic robot version.
Yep.
Godzilla.
And I think that is just in life, if there's something you like a lot, see if you can get a gigantic robot version of it.
Yeah.
Because it's going to be better that way.
I like a cheesesteak sub. I would love a mecha cheesesteak sub.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I bet you kind of like your kids. Maybe you would like giant metal versions of them to battle each other.
That with which we could fend off monsters. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yeah, Godzilla faces off against Mechagodzilla in 1974. The concept was so popular that they did it again the following year in the Terror.
Oh my god, they did it in fucking everything. They also did it in Godzilla versus Kong though. So it's like like the original one has a Mecha Kong.
And actually, they do Mecha Kong before they did Mechagodzilla. That King Kong Escapes is in 1967.
And that movie's terrible. Real bad.
I can't remember the last time I watched it. I keep intending to see it. But yeah.
But even like is King Kong Escapes, is that where the first Mecha Kong comes from?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. The mecha version of Godzilla is so popular that it appears in the Showa, Heisei, Millennium, and the American Monsterverse movies.
I can't even tell you how many fucking Mecha Godzilla toys I have kicking around this apartment.
They're always awesome. My God.
Yeah. I got lots of them.
Yeah. This is the only other time that a non-Godzilla monster gets the mecha treatment.
And it looks cool as hell.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is the thing is like, there's between like this movie or rather between Heisei and Showa, the end of Showa proper, there is a huge movement where like manga and anime really turn up the heat and get super, super popular. So the 70s is when you start to see a lot of shit like Guy King and Grandizer and like that sort of shit. But also like Mobile Suit Gundam comes along and just all of a sudden everybody wants a giant robot in their shit.
So that's what I was trying to understand. Like whenever I come at anything essentially, but specifically these movies for 99-cent rental, I'm always trying to figure out like what's the cultural context, because primarily we're talking about exploitation movies, and this is not an exploitation movie proper, but it is in a sort. And I'm always trying to figure out like what is the historical context of this movie and what is the thing they're really trying to cash in on. And I think you just hit on what it is. So I know that the previous movie, Biollante, so there's the first one, I think we mentioned this before, but like the first one is The Return of Godzilla, but that's in 84.
Yeah.
And so then Biollante, what is that, 89?
That's 89.
So that's really the first one proper. And it doesn't do very well financially or critically. I mean, these movies never did very well critically, but financially it doesn't do very well. And I was sort of thinking like what's happening? And this is, again, why I don't know what's happening in Japan at the time. If you ask me what's happening in the United States in 89, I could rattle off a fucking 10-page list. But I don't really know here, and I think you just hit on what it is. It's like kids are looking for something different. Like the old Godzilla isn't really doing it, and it's because of that. It's because of like all this new giant robot shit.
Yeah. Yeah, and it doesn't really even start with that. It's we called it Gigantor, but I can't remember what it was called in Japan. But like that was a humongous cultural sensation, and it's kind of why one of a couple of reasons why the 80s is such a quiet period for Godzilla.
It's because the Americans were just out there fucking everything up.
Well,
they were like, don't let them take this from us.
Like Japan in the 80s is kind of like America in the 90s, where they are flying so high economically that there's really not a whole lot of that sort of cultural anxiety to drive like a kind of interesting sort of film scene. So like,
what, they didn't have a Republican Party in the background being like, well, who can we go to war with? Come on, guys, think. There's bad ideas in a brainstorm.
On top of that, like they've basically got the world on lock with consumer electronics and cars. They're buying up all the property around the Pacific Rim. It's fucking nuts. And then 1990 happens, and there is this like stock market crash and a major stagnation that I think they're just now starting to sort of recover from, and that's why horror movies and sci-fi movies in the 90s in Japan get real fucking dark with it.
Yeah, there's a lot of class shit buried in a lot of those movies that it's like, this is really bleak.
Yeah.
Because they always end with like people killing themselves.
Yeah. Suicide is a fairly common topic.
But like, that was my understanding, is that Biollante did so poorly with audiences because they were like, well, kids don't really seem to like this, but adults don't seem to like this much either. Like they didn't know who their audience was.
Great movie. I love that monster.
Well, it's a cool looking monster. It's not a great movie. None of these are actually that good. I think this one's okay, but the narratives are a fucking train wreck. But so Biollante looks cool as a villain, and the concept and the creature design are really pretty neat, but I can see why it doesn't do well with it because it's overcomplicated. The whole story is overcomplicated, and the actual monster is overcomplicated. So
I was gonna
get
say that about that when we got to that point, but like, yeah, because the whole problem with Biollante is it's been like 5 years since there was a Godzilla movie. The last one was just Godzilla fucking shit up. Mm-hmm. And so they're like, okay, we're going to do another series of Godzilla movies. And so they come up with like this brand new monster. And the story is way too convoluted. Nobody, like the children come along, they don't really recognize the monster. So there's just not a lot of interest. And so when they get to this one, they're like, okay, let's learn from our mistakes. What happened last time? And they're like, okay, well, you know, kids didn't see it because they didn't recognize the monster. It's complicated. Also, we opened up against Back to the Future Part 2.
That was, I think, the biggest thing was like they opened up against a huge fucking movie.
And, Back to the Future just eclipsed everything worldwide. And so they were like, okay, so let's see. Okay, it's 1991. How do we fix this? They're like, all right, well, first off, we got to bring back a familiar monster.
But how they did it is pretty interesting.
Because it was supposed to be another Godzilla one, or Godzilla vs. King Kong. And King Kong and Ted Turner was like, well, give me lots and lots of money. And they were like, ooh, probably can't afford that.
And they were like, God damn it, Ted Turner. And they were only one of millions of people that said that in the 90s.
So, I know, Jesus Christ. And so then they were like, all right, how about this? We'll have Godzilla fight Mechanicong. And Ted Turner was like, still a little too similar.
You're going to have to talk to my lawyer about that one.
And they were like, fuck. So what do we do now? And so they basically had a poll.
Yeah, they did. They had an audience poll and everybody chose. And he was the clear winner, which I find really interesting. He's not my favorite. We already talked about this, but he's not really among my favorites.
I'm surprised it wasn't Mothra.
I think because after however many decades, Mothra is associated as an ally of Godzilla and not an enemy. And I think to go back and make Mothra an enemy again would have felt like a bit of a betrayal.
Yeah.
Because I think I don't know about the people of Japan. I can tell you about what's going on in my head. There's a little bit of a romance there.
They love our pretty little lady.
They're very close friends. You know, it's nothing serious, but they have quite a bit of affinity for one another. And to see them battle again, I think would have not gone over well. That's just my theory. I could be totally wrong, but I just think they pretty quickly aligned the two of them together. And so to then put them in conflict with each other, it just would not have worked. Yep. So you pick the one who's the most obvious because King Ghidorah was always like the big monster villain. Personally, I would have enjoyed perhaps a King Caesar. You go for a deep cut if you want it.
Yeah. But what this movie does is it does actually set up for a Mothra movie that comes next, but it sets Godzilla up as a kind of bad guy now.
Which I also don't love.
I don't really care.
I prefer my Godzilla to be on the charming side.
You like it with a bunch of little kids going, "Go Godzilla, yatta!"
Well, you know how I feel about kids, so no. But I like a disgruntled Godzilla who's like begrudgingly helping out. He's just like, you fucking jerks.
Yeah.
Every time.
So let's see. We've got some taglines here, and one of them is very funny. Mm-hmm. Just for you, I won't give up.
Love it. That's the one. You don't need other ones. That's the one.
Yeah. Here's another really kick-ass one. Godzilla, hero of beasts and man, triumphs again.
I agree. 100%.
And this time, here's one from the American release. Godzilla is back. This time it's for good. Which, not really.
Snore.
Because here's the thing is, by the time that this movie came out in America, the Heisei period was over.
Yeah. Because this was, what, 98, 99 that it came
Yeah,
out?
they released it on video in 98.
Oh, video. Yeah. I hear that's making a comeback. Don't get me started.
You fucking VHS weirdos.
It looks better this way.
Stop. We're gonna lose. I don't understand you people, but I'm glad you're here. Yeah. Also, a thing that I learned that I was thinking about while I was looking up all that stuff about how they were like, okay, well, everybody liked Back to the Future, so everybody likes time travel movies. So that's why they like why this.
And they like it even better when it doesn't make any fucking sense.
That's why this movie has a time travel element, is because Biollante lost out to Back to the Future 2. But same year as this movie came out, Terminator 2 came out. So everybody does, in fact, love a special effects time travel movie.
That's true. God damn it, we're simple.
Yep. Akira Ifukube was basically retired at this point, and they asked him to come back and do the soundtrack for Godzilla vs. Biollante, but he declined. But then he heard it, and he was so bummed.
And he was basically Godzilla. He was like, you fucking jerks.
He was so bummed by the Western approach to his existing Godzilla
It's
themes
bad. It's not good.
that he returned, mostly at the insistence of his daughter, who basically said, listen, they're going to use your music one way or the other. It might as well be written by you.
Which, again, was why he, kind of leapt out of the sea and was like, "Nah, fine."
There is, he's definitely got a little bit of Godzilla in him.
And so,
got a little Godzilla in us.
And he does, it is the most triumphant score I could imagine. And he basically just fucking recycles it like he does a million other times with everything he's ever done. But, I still hear it. And I'm like, oh, you beautiful, beautiful little man.
It's great stuff. Yeah, he remains in this position until the end of the Heisei era, with his final original film compositions being for Godzilla vs. Destroya.
And it's pretty good.
Yeah.
It's not terrible.
The thing is they're all fundamentally the same.
Yeah, it's the same fucking score every single time. But every time they pass it off to someone else, it's like, this isn't quite right.
I know. It's like somebody comes along and tries to give it, the John Williams treatment.
Ugh.
But it's like, I'm a simple man. All I need is dun 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 dun
Yeah.
dun 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 dun.
That's why you got to look at that new one. I can't remember the guy who did the new one, but it's basically the same as the old one.
Yeah, that dude got it.
Yep.
Understood the assignment 100%. Yeah. So as we mentioned, Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah was not released in the United States until 1988, but upon its release in Japan, American news outlet CNN broadcast some manufactured outrage piece about the movie's themes, feigning concern that it was an anti-American movie due to the scenes where the pre-mutation Godzilla pushes back invading American forces.
And it actually wasn't just CNN.
It was a bunch of them.
Mm-hmm.
Which is weird because most of them were just I can't believe they made a movie where Godzilla kills American soldiers.
Also, fuck you guys. Just Jesus Christ.
It's so on brand for America, though.
It really is. It's like this awful kind of bad faith argument that is really just kind of weird reactionary shit because there's nothing else to react to.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, I see there's definitely some racism in there because.
Oh, hell yeah. Because I sent you those clips, right?
Oh, yeah. I intend to play it because I think it's worth hearing.
Mm-hmm.
The criticisms are really, really fucking dumb. But it's mostly hey, what's the big idea, Japan? You're supposed to be our little buddies over there in the Far East.
Now, this is the thing I can add a little bit of context for. Because this is the part I kind of latched onto a little bit in the backstory. There is absolutely nothing in this movie that feels anti-American at all. Not even remotely.
No.
Because the reality was the Americans fought the Japanese. It was a terrible, bloody war. And it ended. And we all know how it ended. The Americans won, I guess, in a strategic sense. Definitely not in a moral sense.
No.
And I feel like what is happening at the time, because this is the part I dug into a little bit, and what's happening at the time is this is a couple months, maybe about 6-7 months after the war, the first invasion of Iraq ends. And so once again, we have Americans being like, well, who can we fight? Because let's be honest, that's pretty much what we do. We go around picking fights with people. And I'm not just being critical of America. That is literally what we do. There's a certain segment politically of this country who doesn't know what to do with themselves when we're not at war. And they don't know how to feel about themselves when they're not at war, because that is how we've always defined the success of this country. It's either economically or militarily. And in 1991, we were not fighting anyone at that point. And even though our economy was doing great, there were, in a global sense, other countries like Japan who were kind of eclipsing us. And so that is the sort of where all of this comes into, is like, well, look, they've put out this movie, and how dare they show this ridiculous looking dragon, lizard, dinosaur killing Americans? And it's like, what the fuck are you talking about?
I do find the sort of overarching themes of Japanese nationalism to be way more in your face and
hell yeah,
and like a little bit more disturbing.
Look, they needed it. They deserved it. Come on.
It was the beginning of a really harsh economic downturn. They needed a win. God damn it.
But so what he said, he was confronted. The director was confronted with this, like, on television. And he was like, that is not at all how I intended any of this. He's like, I love America. I love American movies. I love American culture. And he was like, but you know what? Americans win in 100% of the movies that ever get made. I thought maybe they should lose just one time. And I am totally on board with that.
You know what?
Maybe Americans need to lose a little bit more. Oh, who needs a fucking participation trophy now, CNN?
You know what? There's nobody I'd rather lose to than a big rubber Godzilla monster.
Fuck yeah.
You know? So, all right, let me just play this stupid fucking clip.
Sheer longevity. None of them can hold a candle to the monster from the land of the rising sun, Godzilla. He's currently starring in his 18th film, and as Taylor Henry reports, the plotline has...
Oh, she's the whitest woman I've ever seen.
In Japan's latest Godzilla movie, this is the great showdown. Godzilla taking on the three-headed monster, King Ghidorah. In the process, Godzilla trashes Tokyo's opulent new 48-story city hall, cynically known among the public here as the tax tower. The destruction comes much to the delight of Japanese moviegoers.
It was powerful and fun.
Godzilla is big, and it's cool to see Godzilla.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Sounds and all.
But some might regard the plot of the movie, released December 14th in Japan, as anti-US. Time travelers arrive in UFOs from the 23rd century. Japan, they say, will rise to become the world's greatest power, only to be destroyed by Godzilla. Godzilla, once a dinosaur friendly to Japan, the movie explains, helped Japanese defeat Americans in a World War II Pacific battle.
Dinosaur! Forget it! First attacking on board! A dinosaur?
The time travelers go
Guy.
back to the wartime era and try to prevent the dinosaur's exposure to American hydrogen bomb testing that transforms it into the fire-breathing Godzilla, destined to turn on Japan. But at the same time, they don't want Japan to become too strong and upset the world balance of power. So King Ghidorah is created to keep Japan in check. Director Kazuki Amori says this appeal to the Japanese survival instinct is not meant to be anti-American.
The movie is not especially anti-U.S. I just thought I'd try to picture the identity of the Japanese people.
Those who've seen it appear fascinated with this, Godzilla's 18th movie, produced at a cost of about $12 million. It's expected to bring more than $15 million at the box office. Godzilla may win the mortal battle against King Ghidorah. Will Japan be saved from Godzilla? The public may have to wait until the next Godzilla movie, already in the planning stages, to find out. Taylor Henry, CNN, Tokyo.
Oh my God, I hate everything about that. Because you know what that is? That is, hey, stay in your lane, little tiny Japan.
That's what I was trying to say, and it didn't really come across, but that's exactly what it is
the indignation is like, you can feel it coming through.
Yeah, and this was happening at a time when, like, it's almost like the news of the sort of the economic downturn hadn't really reached us yet, and there was a period sort of towards like the late 80s where we got away from like making Russians the bad guys in all the movies, and all of a sudden, like, the Yakuza would show up in a movie, or like the bad guys.
Oh, that
would
little
be, like,
one hasn't done anything yet. That's one.
Or like an evil Japanese business would be like the bad guy. It was
Oh
always
yeah, no,
something
you
like
see
that.
it from you see it starting in the late '80s with shit like Big Trouble in Little China and like just sort of this vaguely Asian people, and then it starts to take shape a little bit more in the '90s. But you're right, it's a sort of vaguely racist. American supremacist, maybe not white supremacist, but definitely American supremacist. Like, how could you do that? It's like, do you fucking idiots not know what the first Godzilla is about? Just because they don't say it directly, like, America is responsible for destroying Japan.
Yeah.
Fucking throw them a bone. God damn it.
But it really is. What it was that the reason, because let's face it, nobody in America was going to fucking see this movie. We weren't even aware of this movie. And CNN is like, hey, get a load of this movie over in Japan where Godzilla stomps on a bunch of our soldiers, and then, like, evil white people, want to prevent them from becoming a sort of global economic power.
Right. It should also be said, this is pre today's CNN. This is when CNN was still kind of left of center. Or I'm sorry, right of center, little bit conservative leaning news program. This is like early cable news.
Yeah.
They're not quite they were a different kind of outrage factory back then.
But God,
yeah,
it's such an
weird,
unnecessary piece of reporting there. Like, who the fuck thought that we needed to know about this?
Also, it is not even remotely important to the plot. Like that, the pushing back America. I mean, I guess maybe a little bit.
The thing is the bad guys are very, very much America coded.
They're fucking G.I. Joe, 100%. Like the cartoon version of G.I. Joe.
And the whole sort of high level premise is Americans from the future come back in time in order to manufacture a massive weapon that will destroy all of Japan except for Tokyo, just so we can give them like a special supercomputer that will allow them to craft their nation in sort of like an image that we're cool with.
And I promise you, if that was possible, they would 100% have done that. And they picked the whitest fucking people they could find.
They are outrageous. Oh boy.
Ooh, man.
You want to talk about this movie here? Talk about the plot, the story, such as it is.
Sure.
All right. So we open in the year 2204, and an undersea vessel scans the ocean floor looking for the remains of King Ghidorah. They find it. And it's missing one of its heads, having lost one in a battle with Godzilla.
And I'll tell you what. Whenever they film shit underwater, I'm totally on board. King Ghidorah looks so fucking cool when they like sweep over him because he looks like he's made of stone.
Yeah, and like he's sort of like at this sort of canted angle where like one of his wings is up. The way the whole thing is posed and composed is really sweet.
Yeah, it's shot very, very beautifully. And I will say one of my favorite scenes of all time in any film is the end of the original Godzilla when they do the oxygen destroyer underwater.
He's like reduced to bone.
Yeah, I think that whole the whole thing where they're shooting underwater looks so beautiful, and the music is beautiful, and they kind of, it's a bit of a callback to this because it's very slow, it's very romantic, the way that everything's being shot very slowly and sentimentally. It looks so fucking cool. The rest of the movie is not going to be as cool, but
well, also, this is one of the reasons why I like the Heisei period as much as I do, is because by this point, so much film has been spent on special effects movies in Japan that they have figured it out. And there is a look about them, the way that they film like big special effects scenes. There is a grandiosity to them that the Showa movies don't have. And as much as I enjoy those Showa movies, these just look better and look cooler, and the special effects are always way more colorful.
So I will agree to a point. I will say that the special effects look better. Obviously, the monsters look better. They're still rubber monsters, but like they look a lot better, technologically speaking. The miniature work is not as good.
Okay, I'll give you that, because there are times when like the monsters are crushing the city that you can just see that the windows are like painted onto the boards.
I mean,
it's a little disappointing.
When we watched the last one, which was what, 63, 64?
Yes, right around
Something like that. They made these miniatures where all the doors open, the windows opened, like shit worked in these little tiny towns that they built. That is cool as hell.
Yeah.
And that is an art form that is pretty much gone, I would say, at this point.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, because it's all VFX now. It's all in a computer.
Yeah. And I think, and obviously now it looks a little bit different because we're 30 some years out, but like you can tell in this one that it looks a little cheaper, and it loses something for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. But now we flash back to 1992, and a UFO flies over Tokyo, just like in Ghidorah, the three-headed monster.
Yeah, and just like in every other fucking Godzilla movie, they're going to be like, UFOs, that's not possible. Like, really? That's not possible?
There are parts coming up in the dialogue where they're like, a dinosaur on this island in the Marshalls? That's impossible.
Except for the one that just ate your city.
Just after 17 movies where Godzilla goes stomping through the fucking city. But yeah, this happens to everyone's amazement. So in the morning, a guy named Kenichiro receives a call from Super Mystery Magazine. And it's a bit like the setup for Ghidorah, the three-headed monster, again, where people are trying to write a story for this paranormal magazine. This magazine wants Kenichiro to write about it. Kenichiro, however, is past that.
Once again, we're going to get like, handsome newspaper man is too good for this.
I do love that because, well, the joke is he only writes like serious nonfiction, such as stories about dinosaurs in the Marshall Islands.
Yeah, he's like John Keel. He's like, I'm a little too good for that, I think. Like, are you?
That's a sweet reference right there.
That's a deep cut. How about that?
No. So yeah, he only writes this stuff. He's going to go and interview a crazy guy at the Dinosaur World exhibit who's yelling at everybody about a real dinosaur he once saw on an island in the Pacific during the war.
Which I will say, have you seen -1?
Oh yeah.
Okay. There's a thread through all of these movies that it's a little elusive here and there, but for the most part, they're pretty consistent with like, hey, remember that time that giant dinosaur attacked everybody in the Pacific Islands?
Yeah.
And it's like...
Oh, yeah, I immediately thought of -1 when I saw that. Because the setup it's not like identical, obviously, but it's very similar.
Yeah, and -1 is an incredibly cool movie. Everybody, please stop listening to this podcast and go watch that movie.
Oh, it's the only Godzilla movie.
All right, keep listening to this podcast, but also watch the movie.
The only Godzilla movie that brought a tear to my eye just a little bit.
Michael was actively crying in the theater more than once.
You know what? It's an emotional movie. So, Michael, I get you.
I'm selling you out again on the podcast. Throwing you under the bus.
Elsewhere in Tokyo, a room full of JSDF command and government people go over the UFO data. Miki Saigusa, an ESP researcher, which is a thing that is like a constant presence in these Heisei movies.
Oh no, he's the one from he's Kamen Rider.
Who is?
Saigusa.
Saigusa is the girl, the psychic girl.
Oh no, Surgina. That's the one. Never mind. Doesn't matter.
He's the guy from the Institute, the scientist.
Yes, he's the one.
Oh, that's sweet.
He's Kamen Rider.
Right. They show the flight trajectory as it coincides with the position of Godzilla, currently resting at the bottom of the ocean, still all jacked up from his fight with Biollante.
He also looks cool as hell.
Yep.
Anytime they film Godzilla underwater, I am 100% in.
Ooh, when they do it in this one and he's sort of like backlit, I'm like, oh, give me that shit. It's so good.
Even when he's like standing up, like later on, there's a scene where he's like standing up and he grabs the...
he grabs a submarine?
Yeah.
But yeah, this all indicates that the UFO has something to do with Godzilla. So now, Kenichiro continues his research into the World War II dinosaur, reports to Super Mystery magazine that he thinks that the dinosaur the soldiers saw is actually the creature that was mutated into Godzilla following a series of American nuclear tests out on that island chain.
Feels a little weird that they waited 50 years to build out this lore.
I know. So Kenichiro also fights, but also, you know what? Toho is real loosey-goosey with the lore. Like, they're constantly changing shit up about Godzilla on the fly. Like, they'll release a movie and they'll just tell an entirely new story as if it's been told before. Like, you know what we're talking about, right?
Look, they could release one of these every month, and I would be like, I'm getting it. I want it. Give it to me now.
Yeah. Kenichiro also finds out that Yasuaki Shindo, head of a large business concern in Tokyo, also the owner of the dinosaur exhibit, was in the same garrison as the crazy guy that Kenichiro interviewed. So he goes there to talk to him about the dinosaur.
And maybe why he loves Godzilla quite as much as he does.
That man loves Godzilla.
Yeah, he loves Godzilla in a way that a man should not love a Godzilla. It's in the Bible. It's in the back. That's two. That's two.
Jesus. Not going to be the last one, I assure you.
Nope.
So Shindo denies it, of course. But when Kenichiro tells his theory about Godzilla, he gives up the details and hands over some photos of the dinosaur, which bears a resemblance to Godzilla. So now elsewhere, JSDF patrols find the UFO. Parahelicopters are mysteriously destroyed when they fly near. So they roll out all their weapons to the landing site, and they await word from the aliens who promise to show their faces in the morning.
You know what I liked about the setup of the UFO? The UFO in this movie is dumb as shit. And what comes out of it is even worse. But it reminds me of what was the one with the linguist? The UFO movie. It was not that long, maybe 10 years ago.
The Arrival.
The Arrival, and also a little bit of District. Was it District 9?
The
South African movie.
Yeah.
It reminded me a little bit of that, where it's just like UFO just kind of sitting in a field and everybody around it just waiting for something to happen.
Yeah.
Like it's a little cool. I mean, then people come out of it and it's decidedly less cool.
Yeah. So when the aliens arrive, it's a holographic projection of two white guys and
Yeah.
a Japanese lady in outrageous pastel-colored suits.
Two real white guys. And listen, they look like Will Ferrell and Chris Kattan from Night at the Roxbury. Like it is... One of the guy in this, one in the purple suit, whose name I can't remember, he's like distractingly cross-eyed.
Oh, Wilson Des.
Yeah, Will Ferrell. He
Yeah. Oh boy. And they've all got like outrageous, ridiculous shoulder pads.
Yeah, it is as 90s as 90s can be. It is high Golden Girls 90s.
Yeah.
Their hair is so puffy, and one of them looks like he has like sort of maybe a cranial abnormality. Yeah. I don't know if there's a less offensive way to say that. I'm sorry if there is. I don't know how to say it, but yeah, they are.
There's some weird looking dudes from the future.
Some real rough looking dudes. And then they got like their normal lady who's with them.
Yeah. Yeah, they're not really aliens. They're from the future, and the UFO is a time machine.
This is when it already gets like weirdly complicated, even for a Godzilla movie. You're like,
Oh, yeah.
What the fuck are you talking about?
They don't really explain much. Like all of a sudden, they're teleporting all over the place. There's like a little spaceship that's also a time machine, but it also could teleport stuff. But the main one can't teleport stuff. It's just, there's a whole rule set going on here that they probably should have given you like a fucking handbook for.
And they were like, oh, but this one, we really want this one to appeal to children.
Well, here's the thing. It did. This movie did really well at the box office.
Well, because you throw in some fuzzy looking things.
Yeah, they got some cute little dough-rats. We got time travel. As we know, everybody loves a time travel movie.
The ship has an AI that is voiced by a child who sounds a little bit like Alice from the Resident Evil movies.
So now, in the morning, the Futurians are teleported to a meeting with the Japanese Prime Minister. They come with a dire warning of a future where there is no Japan. Nuclear pollution brings Godzilla back to life and he wrecks everything.
I don't know how to feel about that, because on one hand, I don't want a future with no Japan, but on the other hand, I do want a future with Godzilla wrecking things.
So the destruction leads to widespread nuclear contamination of Japan. Now, their solution is to let them deal with Godzilla because they can take him away.
Now listen, everybody listening right now, when two white guys in shoulder pads come to you and say, let us take over, don't listen to them.
They mean you harm.
Yes. Yeah. White people are terrible.
So the Prime Minister calls up Kenichiro because, as it would happen, in the near future, he writes a book about the dinosaur on the Marshall Islands and how it turned into Godzilla. And the Prime Minister tells Kenichiro that they plan to go back in time and teleport the dinosaur through time so that it's not on the island when the atomic bomb tests take place, and therefore there is no mutated Godzilla to wreck Japan in the present.
Now, is this the first time, other than the first one, where we get the Americans are sort of directly implicated in the destruction of Japan?
Yes.
Because they super dance around it in the first, like they're obviously very, very careful in the original one to not say what happened and like what is the cause of all of this. We should probably do the original at some point.
Yeah.
Because it is a fantastic movie and it is very beautiful. But I think this is the first time that they really are like, oh yeah, this is their fault.
Oh yeah,
by the way.
This one is really on the nose with it. Like they are not dancing around it. It's just like, oh yeah, they made a weapon that completely vaporized an entire city. 2 cities,
and so,
in fact.
I wonder why. Like, I wonder if that is. There's a bit of guilt or shame built into that anti-American sentiment bullshit, that reactionary stupidity. Because this is the first time where they're like, oh, by the way, remember the time they did that?
Oh,
and
yeah,
they
dude.
fucking destroyed everything?
We see it all the time. Like, America writ large hates having a mirror held up to it.
Right. And so I wonder if, like, maybe it's a little bit of that. Like, it's a little bit of what I was saying before about, like, how they were just like, well, things are going too well. We need something to freak out about. Yeah. And so they manufacture a lot of some bullshit.
Oh, sure. And that was going into the Clinton years.
Right.
Because we're by the time this movie came out, we are weeks away from inauguration.
And then things would be beautiful and glorious.
Nothing wrong ever happened ever again.
Nothing bad happened in the 90s. Yeah. But it is a little strange to be like, here's the first time where they're like, oh, remember the time you almost destroyed all of Japan, literally?
Yep.
And in a way that it was not as clean as I think people would like to have believed. Like, oh, and then they dropped these 2 bombs and they dusted off their hands and they went on home.
Right, because Godzilla is not really so much about Hiroshima and Nagasaki as it is about the continued nuclear testing.
Right, he is the consequence of that. He is the fallout of those things. And I think that's what I really loved about the new one, is that they really didn't shy away from people talking about like what happened after. Because if you ever look up, I don't want to encourage people to not confront history, but like if you read about what happened in Japan after the bombs were dropped, it is the most harrowing shit you will ever hear in your life.
Because it wasn't so much just that. Like, I mean, the home nation was completely fucked. The nearby islands were completely screwed, but there were also, with basically high command being more or less gone, there were all of these like garrisons and units that were just stranded out on these islands with no fuel, no food. There was no infrastructure.
No, I mean there were army units that refused to believe that the war was over and continued to behave as though they hadn't ended.
Yeah, that story about the guys who basically stayed in the caves until like 1989.
Like 74 or something like that.
That's a crazy fucking story. But but yeah, like it led to a weird desperation where like there was starvation, famine, disease. It's
a level of devastation that is incomprehensible to Western people.
We've never seen anything like this, ever. Right. Like, we as Americans have no basis for comparison.
Yeah, so CNN, you're getting off pretty fucking easy. Why don't you cool it?
Yeah. Ghidorah, right? So for this mission, the Futurians plan on bringing Kenichiro, Miki, and a couple of science people back in time with them to consult. They'll be traveling with Emmy, the Futurian from Japan, and an android named M11, who I love.
Oh my God.
He is so weird.
He makes this movie so fun. There are moments I laughed out loud. And I don't laugh at much.
You are such a grim, dire person.
I mean, it takes a lot to make me really, really audibly laugh.
He is so silly. And he has such a weird look.
He is. It is hard to imagine that what is Terminator 2?
Same year, 1991.
There are parallels between them. That is.
Oh, but sure, but like the original Terminator was still living pretty large in the sort of like world consciousness.
Yeah, but the second one, you see the second one in this, which I think it's just a coincidence.
Like when she reprograms him.
Yeah, and I think it's probably just a coincidence, but
it definitely is, because I think Terminator 2 probably came out like months before this came out. So there's no way that they could have been influenced by Terminator 2.
Oh, and M11 far less sexy than Robert Patrick.
Yeah, no. M11 has this weird grin on his face basically the entire movie.
He looks like something from like a PBS kids show, where he looks like he's been hit in the head a bunch of times, where he just has this sort of
yeah, like he's got a head injury.
Yeah,
just everything's fine, man. Everything's good.
Hey everybody, I'm real sorry about this episode. We're just gonna try to keep it together.
So, so they on board the time machine, the party also encounters 3 flying creatures called dough-rats. They look like baby Ghidorahs, except that each one only has one head, and they're so cute. Goddamn,
they don't. It's weird that they didn't lean into the dough-rats more, because they are kind of cute in this, like Captain EO. What's a Figment? Was he part of that? Like
there was toy opportunities here.
Yeah, and they just sort of breeze by it because they're like, oh, he's a little fluffy little popple looking things. Everybody remember Popples?
Oh yeah.
Everybody listening to this, do you remember Popples?
I bet you about 50% of the people listening remember Popples.
I'm gonna say it's about 35%.
Okay. Back in the 40s, the U.S. Navy has the island of Lagos under siege with battleships.
Okay, here we go, everybody.
The most fabulous ship captain commands the whole task force.
Oh, my goodness. Okay, so here's what I love about this moment. First of all, this whole scene unfolds like a prehistoric version of Tammy and the T-Rex. But also, the Americans in this moment, in this flashback, are portrayed. They really do feel like G.I. Joe, like they're Joe America, and the captain is the gayest man I've ever seen on film. Remember when we watched The Siege and one of the guys in like the homophobic vigilante crew was like, "You guys, come on, it's getting dark out."
He even had like the lisp and the voice, like it was a little ridiculous.
Yeah, the Navy captain in this, everything he says has just a few extra S's.
He's dressed like a member of the Village People.
He really is. My favorite moment is when he's like talking to one of the, I don't fucking know what they are in the Navy, but he's like,
they're seamen.
He's like, you can tell your son about it when he's born, Major Spielberg. And then he kind of sachets away.
So if you are going to watch this movie after this, you gotta listen to it with the Japanese audio track, because I have also watched this with the English dub, and the English dub dubs his voice even though they don't need to.
Oh no, you have to watch this do not watch this with the American. No, you got to watch the Japanese version.
First of all, the dub is terrible. Second of all, it robs you of one of the funniest fucking things you're ever gonna hear.
And if anybody wants to watch this, I think I threw this out there on social media a week or so ago, but if anybody wants to watch this, it is currently on the Criterion channel. You can get it that way. You can get all the Heisei movies that way. I think you can probably get the Showa movies that way as well. Yeah. Just get the fucking Criterion channel. It's really good. If you can swing it, get it. But get it for this movie alone. Major Spielberg. The fact that he does not just fucking click his heels and just turn.
When
Can flip his wig and walk
he
away.
started talking, I was like, what the fuck is happening?
And
right
I have
now?
to wonder, whenever they do this, I have to wonder, like, are they just, does it not occur to them? Or is this what they think the military is? Because I'm hoping it's the latter, but I don't think
No, like, and then again, like everybody being all like this movie is anti-American. Like maybe they saw this guy and they were like, they are making fun of us right now.
No, I don't think they are. I think that they just think that Buddy Cole is in charge of the Navy.
Oh no. Yep. So
It reminds me of the time Moliere was having lunch at that little bistro in Rome with what's the fucking name? John Lennon, Yoko Ono. Oh, the food here is terrible, but the waiter's hilarious.
oh man, yep, that's him. That is him, Ship Captain Buddy Cole.
Yep.
So the time travelers arrive just in time for a naval barrage. It looks like it's curtains for the Japanese garrison, who are cut off from command. Then M11 goes down to check out the garrison, doing this weird kind of run.
And it's very reminiscent of like Mork and Mindy, like Mork from Ork. Like he is gliding along the air.
That's it. Yeah, he is gliding and sort of like slowly pumping his arms like he's running, but his legs don't move.
Yeah, it's very Bionic Man kind of like it is a science fiction special effect from another era.
Yeah, I think it's supposed to indicate that he's moving extremely fast.
Well, it looks silly as hell.
It looks silly as hell. Not the last time you're going to see it, and I love it. I love it.
Meanwhile, the Americans on the beach have rocket launchers.
Yeah. So, yeah, using a camera, he broadcasts Shindo's final speech to the garrison as they plan to fight the last man against the Americans. And then in the morning, the Japanese attack and are handily repelled by the American forces. Mm-hmm. But when all seems lost, there's a roar and some stomping, and along comes Godzillasaurus, who stomps
along comes
around
Tammy and the T-Rex.
and pushes the Americans back to the shore.
And then they shoot him in the mouth.
Yep, the poor
How are you going to shoot Proto-Godzilla in the mouth like that?
I know. The ship's out to sea cover their retreat by shelling poor Godzillasaurus. It looks like he's on the ropes. Then he gets up and he finishes off the ground forces.
But before he gets up, the guy goes, "Take that, dinosaur!" And then one of the other soldiers yells, "Dude, watch it!" Like they used to say in 1943.
Oh, I know. So a few days later, Shindo and the surviving garrison are being taken home. They salute the dying Godzillasaurus.
Oh wait, but even before that, there's another moment where the guy before the Americans make their retreat, the Captain Buddy Cole is like, "No, let's go. We don't need any more sacrifices." And it sounds like I'm being a little bit homophobic, and maybe I am, but also this man is a high camp stereotype. Like he is just like, "Fellas, let's fire our guns at Godzilla. Show him what you got, boys." Like
surely
it is
somebody in the casting was like, "You sure that's the guy you want for the captain?"
This one, the blonde one. You sure? And he was like, "No, he's the one. He looks very American." It's like
average.
Doesn't
Joe
sound
American.
very American.
Oh my god.
It's wonderful. It's the reason to watch the show.
This movie has so many little moments like that where I'm like, I'm glad we did this one.
Yeah. It'll be something you can tell your son about, Major Spielberg.
Oh, no. So, they salute the dying Godzillasaurus and thank him for helping him. And
the dying Godzillasaurus, I should say, is disgustingly covered in real octopus blood for some reason.
I read that, and I was like, you couldn't just use stage blood?
Yeah. Why couldn't you fake it? Why did you have to kill the octopuses to do it?
I know. So once they're gone, the Futurians...
I feel like I sounded like Richard Kind in that moment. Why didn't you answer the door?
You sound like the ship captain.
Major Spielberg. I'm going to do that for the rest of my life.
So
thank you very much for the bagel, Major Spielberg.
The Futurians teleport Godzillasaurus to the future, dropping him into the ocean on the same spot that Godzilla has been recovering from the Biollante fight.
Now, this is what doesn't make sense to me. Like, this whole plot is convoluted as hell. It does not make any fucking sense.
I have a note coming up that says it actually gets a little confusing here.
But at a certain, like, their whole point is like they're taking Godzilla away so they don't have a weapon. Essentially, they don't have a weapon to fight King Ghidorah.
Right.
Right? But they're not really taking him away. They're just dropping him in the ocean instead of leaving him on an island.
Well, right. So that because there's going to be atomic tests there. That's how Kenichiro thinks that's what creates Godzilla.
Hey, everybody, it also tainted the ocean, not just the land. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah, but the way that they work around this plot point, very funny to me. We'll get there.
It looks great.
No Godzilla problem in the future, but what's this? Emmy has released the dough rats to the island while no one is looking. Why would she do this? I
also love how the Japanese commander, the guy from the future, the commander, the guy who owns the
Shindo.
I love how like deeply moved he is.
He is like crying and shit. And they're all like, yeah, man, this dinosaur gave its life for them.
Okay.
And he is going to
weird, but okay.
He's going to have a moment with this dinosaur a little later on. That's very, very weird.
I thought you were going to say he's going to have a boner about it. And I was like, well, also kind of true.
Yep. So then they return to the present where there's no Godzilla, but there is a King Ghidorah flying around being a huge pain in the ass, just roasting everything with mouth lightning.
And now we cut back to whatever this fucking organization is called, and they're all getting together in behind a door that just is labeled experimental room.
Yep. So Emmy realizes that she's been played by her fellow Futurians. So
white people.
Miki, the psychic, explains to everybody that the plan was to leave the dough rats behind so that they'd take Godzilla's place by being mutated and fusing into a single monster.
Now she's from the last one, right? She's the Biollante one.
Yes, yes.
Who can communicate with Biollante and also can communicate maybe a little bit with Godzilla.
Yeah, she mostly is there to kind of like look off into the middle distance and go, I feel Godzilla is near.
Me too.
Yeah.
But I like that they kind of revived this character a little bit in the new ones.
Yeah.
Except she has a connection more with Kong than with Godzilla.
Yeah, I like the little little psychic girl from I think she's supposed to be from Hollow Earth.
I think so.
Yeah.
I'm glad you appreciated the new one because when I watched it, I went into that being like, this movie is going to be total dog shit. And by the end, I was like standing up, cheering, waving my little pennant.
It's outrageous. It's very silly.
Yeah, it's dumb as hell, but it was real fun.
Yeah. And I think that it helps that however that it is that they characterize King Kong, I just love it.
I will say, Americans consistently drop the ball when it comes to these movies, and I feel like this was the first time that they kind of got it right.
Yeah, but I actually like the previous two.
No, I liked those ones, but they're still a little like, you don't quite get it. You're doing your own thing, and it's fine, and they're enjoyable. But this was, I was just like, all right.
Monsters, they kind of figured it out. They're like, we got to stuff this tight with like more of these monsters.
What you need is good-looking men, giant monsters who kick the shit out of each other. Right. That's all you need.
Dan Stevens.
You just need normal men.
Just innocent men.
Just innocent men.
Yeah. Miki explains that to everybody the plan was to leave the dough rats behind so they take Godzilla's place by being mutated and fusing into a single monster. Now, on the ship, we learn that the Futurians are able to control Ghidorah like a robot. They, the white people from the future, plan on destroying every part of Japan with a massive, super destructive weapon.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah, they'll leave Tokyo as is, and then they'll show the Japanese people how to rebuild the way that they should.
Oh, my note actually calls them popples.
Oh, nice. So now, bummed by the betrayal...
No, wait, here's my question, though. Is this a retcon? Because if they didn't drop these popples on the island, then how do they explain Ghidorah's existence in the past?
Oh, good question.
He should have already existed.
Because I think this is one of those things that Toho is just like, okay, we're just going to pretend Ghidorah has never been around.
Yeah, stop asking questions.
Yeah.
Stop asking questions about this. White people did this. And again, I'm not going to deny that. But yeah, I believe in the original, he comes from like another planet.
Planet X.
Yeah, he's Monster Zero.
Monster Zero. So, bummed by the betrayal, Emmy leaves the ship and goes to Kenichiro to tell him what's happening. In the future, there's this union of nations that coordinates the political aims of all the nations that work in it in order to equalize power around the world. Japan, however, refuses to play along. By this time in the future, it's the biggest economic power in the world, controlling entire continents. Her group within that organization, the Futurians that she came back in time with, stole the time machine in order to come back and wreck Japan so that it never happens and forever remains dependent on this foreign economic power.
Which, first of all, probably true. Definitely where they wanted to go with it. Yeah. But the way she's telling the story, she has like this, and this happens a couple times throughout the movie. She has this weird smile on her face while she's telling this horrible story of global destruction. She looks a little bit amused.
Yeah. In order to do that, they had to get rid of Godzilla, who is always destroying whatever monster comes along to threaten Japan. So the Japanese government has offered a special computer from the future that the Futurians intend to control and reshape Japan with. And the government guys form a new plan to fight back. Since Godzillasaurus is out there in the ocean where Godzilla used to be, if they can hit it with nuclear energy, it'll mutate and turn into Godzilla and come inland and fight King Ghidorah. The only problem is that the Japanese have no nuclear weapons to do it, or do they?
Yeah, but wait.
It turns out Shindo's company has a submarine in the Pacific with a secret nuclear weapon on it.
I love that it's just like, oh, is that all you need?
I know. And that it's just going to happen immediately.
Don't worry, I have one of those.
Right. So now this is where the story gets a little confusing. Because
this is where.
Because we leave this scene thinking that they're going to go out and just like shoot a nuclear missile at Godzilla to make him Godzilla. But because...
Yeah, see? Real confusing.
So
I have a note that says this movie needs Mothra real bad.
This is the thing is also this movie is set up a lot in the same way that Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster is, in that it is very heavily front-loaded with story. Mm-hmm. And the last third of the movie is just monster fighting.
Yeah, it's just ass kicking.
And so this is the part where I think it's Miki is like, oh my God, I sense Godzilla. And they're like, how can that be? There is no Godzilla in this timeline now. And she's like, I don't know, but I do. And then it turns out that because the ocean floor is so polluted with just nuclear shit, that Godzilla just turned into Godzilla anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, because when Godzilla jumps, they get the submarine floating around in the water, and then Godzilla sort of jumps up in front of it. And it's like, well, that's not Tammy and the T-Rex from before.
Yeah.
That's just Godzilla.
Yeah. So, and I think it.
That's why I was like, wait, you didn't do anything. You just moved him somewhere else.
Yeah, and I watched it a couple of times, and so I think the way that they sort of explain it away is there is a sunken nuclear submarine like already there.
Yeah.
That energizes Godzillasaurus and turns him into Godzilla. So this whole let's move Godzillasaurus thing, completely fucking moot. They just wrote it away with this whole thing. I think it's supposed to be the sunken Soviet submarine from Project Jennifer. But yeah, so when Shindo's submarine shows up, it's already Godzilla.
And but it's real cool. It's real cool because he jumps up in front of them. Every time they shoot Godzilla underwater, I am in.
Yeah, because this is when they backlight him. And it's just like silhouetted Godzilla. And he like grabs Shindo's submarine and then, I don't know.
With his little tiny hands.
His little hands, his little Godzilla hands.
Love it.
Yep. And then they sink the submarine and he gets re-energized even more. So now he's even bigger than before.
I actually have a note that says, what the hell is happening in this movie?
This is the part that just throws me. And I think I kind of got it figured out. But yeah, so now... while Shindo plans to do this, is it Emmy goes to Kenichiro?
She does, but in the meantime, his publisher's hitting on him real hard.
Oh yeah, she's like
she's real. She's just like, oh, you're gonna marry me, right? And it's like, who is this lady?
She's very pushy. She's like, we're gonna publish your book, and then we're gonna get married. And I'm like, are they in a relationship, or is she just like throwing this out there?
Well, I mean, if the world's gonna end, just shoot your shot, I guess.
So yeah, Kenichiro and Emmy get in their sweet Jeep and they drive off, but they're chased by M11.
He's just gliding along like Mork from Ork.
This is the part where he's in the car. He hasn't done this. So there's like a really cool like stunt scene where like the cars are driving and he like leans out the window and like rips the door off. He's trying to pull her off. And then they like jump, like they crash into a truck and like Kenichiro's Jeep jumps over it. And then M11
hey, y'all, this is where shit goes off the rails.
I know. Again, M11 gets out and he's all scraped up like the damaged Terminator where like all these little metal parts are like showing.
See, that's why I was wondering when the other one came out, because it was like, this feels very Terminator. This feels like when he chases the thing and grabs the police car with the hooks in his hands.
Oh, right. Right.
That's from the Terminator, everybody, not this movie.
Actually, this is almost directly the same scene in the first Terminator, because what ends up happening is he gets hit by the truck. Dragged under, and like that's how like all of the damage happens to his skin.
His face gets ripped off.
Yeah.
Again, in the Terminator, not in this movie.
Right. I mean, we get a little of that Terminator stuff in here. So now he chases after him doing that Mork from Ork drift thing. And Emmy's like, all right, he's not going to stop unless I go with him. So she goes with M11 back to the spaceship.
Has Godzilla already burst out of the water?
Yes, with a awesome like harp intro.
My note says the harps right here are perfect.
Because it's like bring, 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 and then like Godzilla like rises
and he leaps out of the water. And he has because the helicopters are all flying around him in the water, and Godzilla has this sort of look as if to say like, oh Jesus, not this again.
Like already, I just got up.
And I think that I realize what it is about. It's his overbite that makes him look so charming. Like he's so endearing because he's just like looks a little bit goofy and like pretty disgruntled.
Yeah, they replaced the googly eyes with a sweet overbite.
Yeah, it's perfect.
Yep. So Emmy goes back to the Futurians, who are like, oh boy, I hope these Japanese people don't revitalize Godzilla. And then that's when we cut over to see Godzilla rising up. So then Emmy then repairs M11, reprograms him to be a good guy, and then she sends him out to send Kenichiro back so they can sabotage the computer and stop the Futurians. Meanwhile, the JSDF attempts to stop King Ghidorah with regular jets like a bunch of idiots. Which every time I see this, they do this every time. Monster shows up, they roll out their tanks, their artillery, their missile launchers, their
they do the same shit every time. It's just like at the very beginning of every one where they're like, Godzilla, UFOs, those aren't real. It's like, you fucking dummies. You know it is.
But, yeah. So, yeah, of course, it doesn't work. It does nothing. The Futurians think they have Japan on the ropes, but what's this? Here comes Godzilla.
And then they show again, the guy from the company.
Yeah.
When he shows him the picture and he looks at the picture of Godzilla as if to be like, yep, that's him.
Yeah. So the Futurians are mildly put out by this. They send King Ghidorah out to deal with Godzilla. So Godzilla and Ghidorah spend a few minutes roasting each other, while Kenichiro, Emmy, and the M11 set bombs on the Futurian supercomputer. Godzilla gets knocked down and Ghidorah jumps up and down on him. But blowing up the supercomputer cuts off the Futurians' control over Ghidorah, which gives Godzilla the chance to fuck up Ghidorah's shit.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, you knock him down, and he has those little tiny arms. He can't get up very easily.
No, it's a real struggle.
We actually don't ever see Godzilla get up.
No, you don't.
That's because of the tiny arms.
Yeah, right. So he gets up, grabs Ghidorah, doing the classic slam him on the ground by the tail move. Meanwhile, inside the ship, Emmy and Kenichiro take over the bridge, but the Futurians explain that it doesn't matter because their automatic time warp will take over due to the ship malfunctions, and it'll bring them home in a few minutes. And they've won simply because Godzilla is up and around.
And they are guarded by two very greasy twinks.
Super androgynous twins.
I'm not going to explain what twinks are. You can look it up if you don't know. I'm pretty sure at this point everybody knows. Yeah, they're like real strange looking. They're twins? I think they're twins.
They're twins, yeah. They're definitely doing the non-binary thing.
Twin twinks.
Because this Godzilla isn't friendly from the past, it's all good for the Futurians because he's just going to fuck up Ghidorah and then he's going to fuck up Japan.
Yeah, 6 in one hand, Godzilla in the other.
So,
and meanwhile, Emmy she's put on this amazing 90s outfit. Like she's really leaning into the era.
Yep. Yeah, M11 shows up, busts them out of this tough situation so they can all escape. Meanwhile, Godzilla and King Ghidorah do some sweet monster fighting.
You know what you don't get in this one, though? You don't get electricity to the crotch. You don't get anyone kicking anybody else in the butt.
No, but you know what you do get? You do get a little bit of Godzilla emoting.
Not
quite as extreme as the last one where he's like turning his head away as if to say, no, I will not team up with Rodan.
Yeah, he's not stamping his foot.
No.
Or it's not like, is it all monsters attack? Is it the one where like he's basically just like, oh no, here we go.
Yep. It looks like Ghidorah has Godzilla in a tough spot by wrapping one of its heads around Godzilla's neck, strangling him. It's all foaming at the mouth and shit.
I don't care for this part.
No. Then he uses some kind of atomic energy burst to blast the head off.
I do care for that part.
I do like that. That's a fucking awesome part. M11 pilots the little time machine teleporter ship with Emmy and Kenichiro on it. And their plan to stop the Futurians from getting away involves teleporting them to the battlefield in front of Godzilla before they can warp
and
away.
They do, and they open the shutter on the ship, and what do they see?
Ooh,
Godzilla's beautiful smiling face.
Yep.
Like he's got a real cheesy look on his face.
So with Ghidorah on the ropes trying to get away, Godzilla shoots him with atomic breath, wrecking his wings and sinking him in the ocean. And just then, the Futurian ship shows up, and Godzilla roasts it with atomic breath.
Beautiful.
Yep. So, with no one else to fuck with, Godzilla goes inland and starts trashing Tokyo proper. The JSDF roll out their artillery and maser cannons, which only seem to make Godzilla more angry.
Which we know from all of the other movies.
Yep. So, with nothing left to do, Godzilla doing Godzilla things, Emmy and M11 set out to the future with a plan. Meanwhile, Godzilla approaches Shindo's tower. The two of them share a solemn moment.
What I love about this is that, like, Shindo, for some reason, he's just going to sacrifice himself just because.
Because there's no reason. I don't
because
know
he's
why
like,
he does this.
You saved me once. You must take me now.
Yeah.
And yet, Godzilla is just sort of there, just kind of mugging for the camera.
Right, because, like, Shindo keeps, like, nodding at him, and then Godzilla does something that's kind of like he's nodding at him also.
But he's got, like, a big goofy grin on his face.
Yeah,
like,
but the look on his face is like, of course you know right now I'm going to have to kill you.
Beautiful.
Yep. And so he lets Godzilla roast him along with his tower. Emmy warps back to the future. They recover the remains of King Ghidorah from the ocean, outfitting missing and damaged parts with robot parts.
This movie is a mess.
It's great.
This whole narrative has fallen apart.
So yeah, they teleport back to 1992 to fight Godzilla with this sweet robot dragon, and Emmy piloting it. Meanwhile, Godzilla's just stumbling around Tokyo like a drunk toddler. There's lots of close-ups of Emmy throwing switches and pushing buttons, and Godzilla shooting atomic breath. It's actually all cool as hell. Like, this description doesn't know justice.
Yeah, it is pretty. I will admit, as a lover of the previous era, this part is pretty cool.
Yeah. Godzilla grabs Ghidorah out of the air, slams it down to the ground, knocking Emmy out for a bit, but then she wakes up and shoots Godzilla with these cables that electrocute him. Then she shoots out this giant metal claw that grabs Godzilla and hits him with more electricity.
What I love about this is these are essentially the same weapons that Mechagodzilla has.
Yeah.
Because Mechagodzilla also has those cables.
They're going to do it again in a couple of years in the Mechagodzilla movie. So with Godzilla fully screwed, Ghidorah takes off to the ocean with Godzilla tied up in all these cables and dumps both of them in the sea when Godzilla roasts her with atomic breath mid-flight. Just when all seems lost, she emerges from the sea in that time machine teleporter ship and warps back to the future where Japan is great again.
We also get to see Godzilla roaring underwater.
Yep, and just as it would appear that everything's coming up Millhouse, we cut to the ocean floor where Godzilla wakes up. Yep. Fade to black, roll credits.
I Again, I feel the need to apologize.
This discussion doesn't know justice. Like it's a terribly entertaining movie.
It's a pretty entertaining movie. I mean, the U.S. Navy captain is really the highlight.
This is one of my favorites of the whole bunch. Like I picked this one specifically because I think of the Heisei period, this is my favorite.
I just can't believe that you were like, oh, we've never done a Godzilla movie. How about this one from 1991?
These are my favorites. What can I say?
These are your favorites. Get the fuck out of here.
The thing we talk about it in the last one is the Showa period ones get really, really silly really fast. And
this is your favorite, even against the first one and the new one. Because that's for me, opposite ends. Like my favorite is the first one, followed very closely. Well, I'm not very closely, but followed closely by -1.
I will say this. The first one is not a fun movie.
No.
It's enjoyable, but it's not fun. Godzilla -1 is also fucking outstanding. However,
it's a bit of a downer.
It's heavy and it's a bummer, and like it really is a movie that's kind of trying to go back to the original theme. I even think Shin Godzilla is a little hard to sort of sit through. It just doesn't thrill the same way.
Because Shin Godzilla is a monster movie. He's not a fun character in that.
No,
he does not even look endearing. He's all torn up.
Like this one hits all the spots for me because the special effects are great, the suits are great.
I guess I get it.
It's utterly preposterous. Like it is so fun. That's really what it comes down to.
I guess I understand. I prefer the more rubbery goofiness of it all, but I can understand why this era, why this would be the more appealing one. Because even Biollante is a little serious and not so fun.
The Heisei ones also have the balls to take themselves seriously.
Not as seriously as the Millennium Era ones do.
No, but there's also I don't know. I haven't gone back and really watched those.
Those movies they're not good.
I recently rewatched the Mechagodzilla one just because that one is amazing. But the rest of them just I don't know. They lack a je ne sais quoi, I never go back to those ones.
Because what they lack is the same thing. You know, this is like what's the well, I'm not going to talk about it because it's actually going to, I think, happen after this in terms of our canon. Yeah. But like, what in terms of franchises, the Heisei ones, there's still a bit of goofiness to them because at its heart, with the exception of the first one and the new one and Shin Godzilla a little bit, there is a silliness to them. There is a sort of whimsy to them that the franchise as a whole has. And they still maintain it in this one more than probably the other Heisei era ones. The Millennium ones lose it altogether. And they try to take it too seriously. And that's why there's only 3 Millennium movies?
Yeah.
Maybe 4?
As far as these eras go, they get smaller and smaller and smaller as they go along. Just whatever the approach to Godzilla is, just does not have... It's just diminishing returns. It just has less and less appeal every time they kind of try to do it.
Because it doesn't have charm. And I think that's maybe what the legendary kind of MonsterVerse movies are. That's what they hit on is like, oh, people want to be endeared. They want these characters. They don't want them to be villains. They want them to be the saviors. Or at the very least, they want them to be an anti-hero, which is, I guess, kind of what Godzilla always is like, he's a begrudging hero. Like, he never is presented as like, I don't want to do this. I'll do it because Mothra asked me to. Like, Mothra's like a little bit sort of like a Kamala Harris.
Yep.
It's like, I guess if I have to.
Fine, I suppose I'll do that.
And there's something very charming about that. And that's sort of what draws you in. And it is not as present in these movies. And it is definitely not present in the ones that come after this.
No, because they deliberately position Godzilla as the bad guy again. And they rely on Mothra to be the hero.
Which, if you're going to present Mothra in a larval stage, it's not going to work. You're not going to win me over. Nope. She's got to look real pretty.
Gotta have that. Gotta have them wings, baby.
Well, that was a movie. I don't know if this. I mean, I guess it was it inspired enough confidence that Toho was willing to invest in more of them. So I guess it's successful by that measure.
Yeah.
It's fun to watch. I mean, the monsters are cool looking. Ghidorah looks way cooler in this than in the 63 one.
Yeah. Yep. It's a fun movie. I enjoy it.
Yeah, it's a hard one to do justice because it is a lot of action and an absurd plot that you can't really narrate because it's so all over the place.
Right. That is sort of the problem with trying to talk about a tokusatsu movie because it's so visual that I can't really describe it adequately, but the special effects play such a central role to these movies that it's mostly me just going, and then Godzilla looks at him like this, and then they shoot him with lightning, and like I sound like an idiot talking about this stuff. So just
listen, everybody. If you're into drugs, I'm gonna say just have an edible and watch these movies. If you're not into drugs, they're still fun, but you're gonna try to pay attention to the plot a little more than you should.
Yeah. All right then. Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah, 1991. Fun movie. Bottom line, fun movie.
Yeah, you should watch it. Maybe more than listen to us talk about it.
So speaking of fun movies, what's next?
Oh, well, Bring Me the Axe. We'll be back next week. As you said, we have a guest. We're going to be talking about Spanish language Dracula, 1931. I love that movie. I'm a big fan of Universal Horror, and I love both of them, but I think I love the Spanish language one a little bit more. I don't know where you can find it outside of the Dracula box set, but if you can find it, definitely watch it. That's next week. And then this here 99-cent rental will be back in 2 weeks. We're going to be talking about Heisei.
Oh, God.
A deeply, deeply strange and bewildering film that I love more than I probably should.
When I looked at the schedule and I was like, oh, God, I got to talk about Godzilla and I'm going to sound like an idiot. I cannot imagine.
No, you're going to sound real dumb talking about that movie.
Imagine what that episode is going to sound like. Mm-hmm. And then the big flying severed head bites her on the butt.
Yeah, there's a piano that eats a girl.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Kung Fu runs around with just her legs for a while.
It's fine. She's gonna fight that witch. Does any of this sound appealing? Does it make sense? It's not gonna make any more sense in 2 weeks.
Yeah, get ready. Just get ready. Fucking House. Jesus
Listen,
Christ.
go watch House. Watch it. It's 1977. Toho House. It is a fantastic movie. It is a visual feast. And it is a story that makes absolutely no sense. Doesn't need to.
And then Baron, you know what? I'm going to leave that little detail out for when we talk about it. But yeah.
What we're gonna say that a man actually turns into a giant bunch of bananas because that happens too.
Oh no. This is the thing. I sound like I'm exasperated talking about this. I think House is amazing. It is
a fantastic movie. I love it so much. I am so happy to watch it again. Any excuse to watch this movie, I will take it.
Nothing else like it in the world.
Nope.
All right, so be back here in a week as we take on Dracula. And then be back here in 2 weeks as we go insane talking about House.
Yep.